2, 1.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the online orientation on the guidelines for the grant of the FY 2022 performance-based bonus. We are your hosts for this afternoon. My name is TJ Pasco.
And I am Selena Dayrit. To everyone watching live via the AO25 Secretariat YouTube channel and Facebook page, we hope that you will find this afternoon's program helpful and informative.
Last year, we are hosting our orientation virtually to ensure the proper cascading of the FY 2022 PBB guidelines and other PBB-related information while still observing public health protocols. Our online orientation also ensures that our PBB focal persons across the country are well informed about the FY 2022 PBB guidelines.
Before we proceed with our orientation proper, we wish to remind everyone that the AO25 Secretariat is recording this session. For our Zoom participants, kindly turn off your microphones and wait for your turn to speak to avoid unnecessary background noise during the discussions. You may leave your comments or questions on the live chat of this YouTube video or on our PBB Facebook page. For easy recognition, kindly indicate your name and agency in your comments. Comments will be discussed during the Q&A portion. For questions specific to your agencies, please send an email to ao25secretariat@dap.edu.ph. We thank you for your cooperation.
We also have the members of the AO25 Technical Working Group and the oversight agencies from the Office of the President, Department of Budget and Management, Department of Finance, our friends from the National Economic and Development Authority, Career Executive Service Board, Civil Service Commission, Commission on Higher Education, Commission on Audit, Presidential Communications Operations Office, Local Water Utilities Administration, Governance Commission for GOCCs, Department of Interior and Local Government, DBM BMBs, DBM OPCCB, DBM OCIO, DBM SPIB, Procurement Service, PhilJEPS, GPPB-TSO, Anti-Red Tape Authority, Philippine Competition Commission, and the Development Academy of the Philippines.
For this afternoon's online orientation, we will be discussing the following: the overview of the FY 2022 PBB scheme, the new PBB criteria and conditions, the PBB scoring scheme, agency accountabilities, eligibility criteria, timelines, other reminders, and of course, the much-awaited Q&A portion to clarify your questions regarding the FY 2022 PBB. You may leave your questions in the comment box of this live stream via YouTube or Facebook page. Please don't forget to indicate your name and agency.
To formally welcome everyone to this online orientation, we would like to call on Undersecretary Kim Robert C. De Leon, Chair of the AO25 Interagency Task Force and Technical Working Group, and also the Functional Group Head of the DBM Organization and Systems Improvement Group, Agency Task Force and Technical Working Group, and also the Functional Group Head of the DBM Organization and Systems Improvement Group, Agency Task Force and Technical Working
to the
Group,
members of the
and also the Functional
AO25
Group Head
Technical
of the
Working
DBM
Group, our
Organization and
validating
Systems
agencies,
Improvement
and all
Group,
our PBB focal persons, a
Agency
pleasant
Task Force
afternoon.
and Technical
We
Working
are
Group,
now in the
and
11th
also the
implementation
Functional Group Head
cycle
of the
of the
DBM
results for
Organization and
performance
Systems
agency
Improvement
system
Group,
or the RBBMS persons, and the performance
Task
based bonus
Force
for the
and Technical
PBB.
Working
We are
Group,
now in the each
and
year
also the Functional
implementation
Group Head
cycle
of the
of
DBM
the results for
Organization and
performance
Systems
management system or the RBBMS persons, and just last year we were able to introduce the each year implementation cycle with refined results for the performance system through the issuance of the 2021 PBB Guidelines. As part of our continuing efforts to improve the PBB process, we have endeavored to release the FY 2022 PBB Guidelines within the first quarter of the year. And with the full support of our IATF principals, we successfully issued and approved the signed 2022 PBB Guidelines last March 26, 2022, exactly a month ago. The fiscal year 2022 PBB shall continue to observe the simplified PBB guidelines we have introduced in 2021. Our purpose is to sustain focus and results, especially on the delivery of agency performance commitments and optimum utilization of agency budget. Make stronger the roles of agencies in ensuring accountability for results of their respective delivery units. Further, measure and evaluate agency performance, highlighting the public satisfaction with the quality of public service delivery, utilization of resources, and strengthen agency stewardship performance, highlighting the public satisfaction with the quality of public service delivery, utilization of resources, and strengthen to the members of the AO25 Technical Working Group, our validating agencies, and all our PBB focal persons, a pleasant afternoon. We are now in the 11th implementation cycle of the Results-Based Performance Management System, or the RBPMS, and the Performance-Based Bonus, or the PBB. Each year, the AO25 IATF search for ways to improve the PBB process. And just last year, we were able to introduce a new and simplified scheme with refined requirements and a scoring system through the issuance of the 2021 PBB Guidelines. As part of our continuing efforts to improve the PBB process, we have endeavored to release the FY 2022 PBB Guidelines within the first quarter of the year. And with the full support of our IATF principals, we successfully issued and approved the signed 2022 PBB Guidelines last March 26, 2022, exactly a month ago. The fiscal year 2022 PBB shall continue to observe the simplified PBB guidelines we have introduced in 2021. Our purpose is to sustain focus and results, especially on the delivery of agency performance commitments and optimum utilization of agency budget. Make stronger the roles of agencies in ensuring accountability for results of their respective delivery units. Further, measure and evaluate agency performance, highlighting the public satisfaction with the quality of public service delivery, utilization of resources, and strengthen agency stewardship. We would like to emphasize that we highly appreciate the agency's performance and accomplishments in realizing the programs of government. It is our duty to continuously improve our processes and achieve our goals of institutionalizing the culture of performance among government agencies. This is with the collaborative efforts among agencies and taking into account performance and achievements of our targets. In this another year of PBB implementation, we shall not forget that the PBB is an incentive system for rewarding exemplary performance of both agencies and individuals. It is not just a bonus, but a validation of our hard work and perseverance to deliver high quality and impact services to the public. The AO25 hopes that the 2022 PBB we will be able to assist agencies to realize key government programs and societal goals, provide quality public service, and recognize agency and individual efforts. Rest assured that we will also do our part to ensure the timely assessment of your respective submission and release of the 2022 bonus. We deeply appreciate your continued support and participation in the implementation of the PBB since 2012. We hope that this online orientation will give you the information that you need to be equipped in complying with the grant of the fiscal year 2022 PBB. Thank you very much and good afternoon once again.
Thank you very much, Yusek De Leon, for that warm welcome, and thank you for reminding us again the true essence of what the PBB is. It's more than an incentive. It's a validation of the government's hard work, our government employees' hard work. Now, the AO25 has prepared a video presentation to show the highlights of the 2022 PBB. Let's all watch this instructional video.
Since its inception in 2012, the Results-Based Performance Management System, or RBPMS, and the Performance-Based Bonus, or PBB, continue to be as tools used by the Philippine bureaucracy in ensuring the institutionalization of the culture of performance among government agencies and employees. From the previous incentive scheme, the AO25 introduced a new scheme and refined requirements in FY 2021, which was the result of consolidated studies and research in improving the implemented PBB process through the years. Since FY 2012, the AO25 Interagency Task Force issues the guidelines for the grant of the performance-based bonus annually to assist agencies in the eligibility criteria and conditions, requirements, and timelines that should be observed. Now, let's discuss the FY 2022 PBB Guidelines. Essentially, the FY 2022 PBB shall continue the new and simplified PBB scheme introduced in FY 2021. Strengthen the effectiveness of the existing incentive system. Assist agencies in achieving the goals and expected outcomes of the government. Focus on the delivery of agency performance commitments and optimum utilization of agency budget. Reinforce roles of agencies in ensuring agency accountabilities. Enable agencies to conduct self-assessment of their overall performance, and ensure the timely release of the bonus. What's new for FY 2022 PBB? For FY 2022 PBB, there are some modifications in the FY 2021 requirements. Details of these modifications will be discussed later in this video. The coverage of the FY 2022 PBB still includes the following: departments and attached agencies, constitutional offices, other executive offices, state universities and colleges, government-owned or controlled corporations covered by DBM and under GCG, local water districts, local government units. The DILG, the LUA, and the GCG shall issue separate guidelines for the grant of the FY 2022 PBB for LGUs, LWDs, and GOCCs covered by RA number 10149, respectively. Each agency must satisfy the criteria and conditions under the 4 dimensions of accountability: performance results, process results, financial results, and citizen or client satisfaction results. An agency must satisfy a total score of at least 70 points and achieve at least a rating of 4 for at least 3 criteria based on the PBB scoring system. Now, let's discuss the FY 2022 PBB targets, assessment, and scoring system. How do we score the agency's accomplishments for the FY 2022 PBB? The FY 2022 PBB is observing the same scoring system as the FY 2021 PBB. Transparency in the PBB scoring system allows agencies to conduct their own self-assessment of their FY 2022 overall agency performance. To be eligible for the FY 2022 PBB, the agency must attain a total score of at least 70 points and achieve at least a rating of 4 for at least 3 criteria. Same with the FY 2021 PBB scoring system. To be able to attain a total score of at least 70 points, the agency should aim for a performance rating of 4 in at least 3 criteria. The unit or units most responsible for the criteria with a performance rating of below 4 shall be isolated from the grant of the FY 2022 PBB. Please note that there are other possible combinations of performance ratings that will enable an agency to garner at least 70 points and qualify for the FY 2022 PBB. Similar to FY 2021 PBB, the 4 accountability dimensions, performance, process, financial, and citizen or client satisfaction results remain as the criteria and conditions for the grant of the FY 2022 PBB. For FY 2022 PBB, the agency accountability requirements are retained and shall be used as the basis for determining the eligibility of responsible units and individuals. This will be further discussed later in this video. Now, let's proceed with the details of each of the 4 accountability dimensions. The targets under performance results will enable agencies to concentrate their efforts and available resources on their mandates and core functions, as well as ensure the delivery of high-quality and high-impact activities. For NGAs, GOCs is covered by the DBM and SUCs. Achieve each one of the Congress-approved performance targets under the PIB of the FY 2022 GAA. The performance results of agencies shall be closely monitored through the Unified Reporting System, or URS, Generated Budget and Financial Accountability Reports, or BFARS. The quarterly BFARS of the agencies, as uploaded in the DBM URS, shall be submitted in a timely manner, within 30 days after the end of each quarter. The rating scale for the performance results used in FY 2021 remains the same for FY 2022 PBB, wherein to attain a score of 5, the agency should meet each one of the Congress-approved performance targets for FY 2022, which means all performance indicators. 2022 Process Results Targets. The target is the greater ease of transaction of core services based on the mandated functions covering government to citizens, government to businesses, and government to government transactions and the administrative and supporting services within the agency. For agencies and SUCs, the target will be substantive improvements in ease of doing business or ease of transaction with respect to two critical services as declared in the updated Citizens Charter and in line with the Anti-Red Tape Authority's Whole of Government Re-engineering Manual. The two critical services include one core service based on the mandated function of the agency and one support or administrative service. As defined in ARTA Memorandum Circular 2019-2A, the services may be categorized based on the following. External services refer to government services applied for or requested by external citizens or clients or those who do not form part or belong to the government agency or office. Internal services refer to government services applied for or requested by internal clients or individuals who are within the respective government agency or office, such as, but not limited to, its personnel or employees, whether regular or contractual. Internal services include services such as, but are not limited to, back-end or support services to regulatory functions related to permitting, licensing, and issuance of a privilege, right, reward, clearance, authorizing, or concession. In selecting the critical services to be prioritized by the agency, the following factors shall be considered. The selected critical service is a core service, which is a process needed to achieve the overall mission and objectives of the public sector organization. These services may refer to those that are aligned with the agency's mandate and main functions. The most complaint service with the greatest number of complaints received by the agency and other complaints handling agencies. The service or services with the greatest number of pending transactions or backlogs that went beyond its prescribed processing time as declared in the agency's Citizens Charter. A service that generates income or revenue for the government. A service attributable to the major final outputs or programs of agencies, and a service that involves interagency action to complete the transaction. Highlight the tangible improvements from the viewpoint of the transacting public or client in terms of access, turnaround time, transaction costs, documentary, and other requirements. Proof or evidence may be any of the following: ISO QMS certification or equivalent certification, most current and updated Citizens Charter, report on the digitization initiatives or digital transformation of external and internal services, and standard operating procedures, manual or documentation of service delivery standards for frontline and non-frontline services. With the new requirements under this accountability dimension, the process results for FY 2022 PBB shall be assessed and scored as follows. On the rating scale 1, no substantial improvement in ease of transaction in both external core and internal services. On the rating scale 2, achieve substantial improvements to ease transaction in internal service. On the rating scale 3, achieve substantial improvements to ease transaction in external service only. On the rating scale 4, achieve substantial improvements to each transaction in external but non-priority core service and internal service. And on the rating scale 5, achieve substantial improvements to each transaction in priority core service and internal service. 2022 Financial Results Targets. For agencies and GOCCs covered by the DBM, attainment of the FY 2022 disbursements BUR, and for SUCs, likewise achieve the FY 2022 disbursements BUR and the FY 2022 earmarked income targets. The GOCCs and agencies with fund transfer shall likewise follow the formula for the disbursements BUR for GOCCs as stated in Memorandum Circular number 2022-1. The 2022 disbursements BUR shall be computed as follows. The new formula is, the disbursements BUR is equal to the total disbursements, cash and non-cash, excluding personal services, net of payments made in 2022 for past year's obligations over the total obligations. For SUCs, the financial results criteria also look into the utilization of the SUC's earmarked income. The rating scale for the financial results used in FY 2021 remains the same for FY 2022 PBB, wherein to attain a score of 5, agencies must achieve 80 to 100% rate of accomplishment for the disbursements BUR. 2022 Citizen or Client Satisfaction Results Targets. For NGAs, GOCCs covered by the DBM and SUCs, submit reports on Citizen or Client Satisfaction Survey or CCSS and resolution of all reported complaints and concerns from the hotline hashtag 8888 and Contact Center ng Bayan or CCB. For evidence on the Citizen or Client Satisfaction results, agencies may report the results of the CCSS using Annex 5. Said report should follow the prescribed requirements and rating scale as stated in Annex 5. Reports summarizing the hotline hashtag 8888 concerns and CCB complaints received in FY 2022 and their status if resolved or pending. And agencies shall ensure the resolution of all complaints and grievances and for new requirements introduced in FY 2022. Ensure compliance to the 72-hour prescribed period to take action on complaints as provided in EO number 6, Series of 2016. With the new requirements under this accountability dimension, the Citizen or Client Satisfaction results for FY 2022 PBB shall be assessed and scored as follows. On the rating scale 1, no submission or did not conduct CCSS. On the rating scale 2, average satisfaction rate with unresolved complaints and at least 30% compliance rate to hashtag 8888 and CCB. On the rating scale 3, more than average rate with unresolved complaints and at least 50% compliance rate to hashtag 8888 and CCB. On the rating scale 4, high satisfaction rate with 100% complaints resolved and at least 80% compliance rate to hashtag 8888 and CCB. On the rating scale 5, high satisfaction rate with 100% complaints resolved and compliance rate to hashtag 8888 and CCB. To sustain the institutionalization of compliance to existing government-mandated laws and standards, agencies and their performance management team or PMT shall continue to implement, monitor, and enforce compliance with the following requirements within their agencies. For 2022 PBB, the submission of the ARTA certification of compliance is no longer an agency accountability, while the designation of the agency's Committee on Anti-Red Tape or CART and compliance with the National Competition Policy or NCP are the newly introduced agency accountabilities beginning this cycle. Same with the FY 2021 PBB, compliance with these conditions shall be used as the basis for determining the eligibility of responsible units and individuals. Agencies should submit these legal requirements directly to the validating agency. Eligibility of individuals. For FY 2022 PBB, the delivery units of eligible agencies shall not be ranked. The agency must achieve a score of at least 70 points. The agency should achieve a performance rating of 4 in at least 3 criteria. The unit or units most responsible, including its head, For the criteria stated in Section 3.0, with a performance rating of below 4 and non-compliance with the agency accountabilities will be isolated from the grant of the FY 2022 PBB. Eligible individuals shall be granted FY 2022 PBB at uniform rates across the agency, including its officials and employees. The corresponding rates of the PBB shall be based on the agency's achieved total score as shown in Section 7.0. Employees belonging to the first, second, and third levels should receive a rating of at least very satisfactory based on the agency's CSC-approved Strategic Performance Management System or SPMS or the requirements prescribed by the CESP. Kindly note that the employees who transferred from the non-participating government agencies shall be rated where he or she served the longest, and the eligible employees shall receive the PBB on pro rata basis corresponding to the actual length of service to the participating agency. Officials or employees who rendered less than 9 months but a minimum of 3 months of service and with at least a very satisfactory rating shall be entitled to the PBB on a pro rata basis. Officials and employees who fail to submit the 2021 SALN or those who are responsible for the review and compliance procedure of SALN shall not be entitled to the PBB. Officials and employees who fail to liquidate all cash advances received in FY 2022 within the reglementary period shall not be entitled to the PBB. The total score as stated in Section 4.0 shall be the basis in determining the amount of the PBB an agency is eligible for. The maximum rate of the PBB for agencies that will achieve 100 points shall be 100% of the 65% monthly basic salary of an individual as of December 31, 2022. Submit evidence of accomplishments of performance results, process results, financial results, and citizen or client satisfaction results as provided in Section 4.0 on or before February 28, 2023. Electronic submission. Scanned copy of the official submission and editable MS Word or Excel files for use of the AO25 Secretariat. Ensure that all explanations and justifications for deficiencies are already attached in the submission. Agencies are encouraged to provide information to the AO25 Secretariat on compliance with the agency accountabilities provided in Section 5.0. Agencies shall be responsible for the review and updating of their respective personal services itemization and plantilla of personnel or PSI-POP under the DBM's Government Manpower Information System or GMIS. Head of agencies with the support of their PMPs should enhance the implementation of their internal communication strategy on the PBB and fulfill the following. Engage their respective employees in understanding the PBB. Disseminate the performance targets and accomplishments of their agencies to their employees through the intranet and other means, as well as publish these on their respective websites for the public's information. Set up a help desk to respond to queries and comments on the targets and accomplishments of their agencies. Set up a complaints mechanism to respond to the PBB-related issues and concerns raised by officials and employees of their respective agencies. The head of the agency shall designate a senior official who shall serve as a PBB focal person. For questions and clarifications, agencies may contact the AO25 Secretariat through the following contact details flashed on the screen. Thank you.
As a reminder, the instructional video that we just watched and this virtual orientation session will be available online for your reference and for cascading within your agencies. To further discuss the highlights of the FY 2022 guidelines, may we now call on the Program Director of the AO25 Secretariat, Ms. Maria Rosario A. Ablan.
Okay, magandang hapon po. Ako po si Ochi Ablan. I'm from the AO25 Secretariat. So I hope you were able to gather yung info sa PBB Guidelines for 2022 with our video presentation. But right now, I would just like to highlight some points for better understanding. Okay, so yun pong PBB guidelines. This was the 2022 PBB guidelines was issued last March 24, and we sent copies to the agencies. But if you want to access or have a soft copy, you can access it in sa AO25 website. So it's in the screen kung ano po yung link that you can get a copy of it. Okay. So next slide. We also have in our AO25 Secretariat, you can check your status ng PBB. It's there for each agency to see kung ano po yung status ng kanilang PBB. Paki-flash na lang po sa screen yung PowerPoint. Naka-flash na po ba? Hindi ko kasi makita. Okay. So in FY 2022, we still maintain the same scheme that was used in FY 2021. So each agency must satisfy the same criteria and conditions under the 4 dimensions of accountability. We still have the performance results, the process results, the financial results, and the citizen-client satisfaction results. And similar to 2021, to be eligible, the agency must need to attain a total of at least 70 points and achieve at least a rating of 4 for at least 3 criteria based on the PBB scoring scheme. Next slide. So for the 2022, this is a summary of the changes. Though we still have the same 4 dimensions now, there are some modifications in the process results and the citizen client satisfaction results requirements. For process results, the target is now achieving ease of transactions for only 2 critical services. If you recall in 2021, the requirement, and even ng mga past years pa, parang ang nire-require is to improve yung processes for all services declared in the Citizens Charter. But now, for 2022, we will just be focusing on 2 critical services. And then for the client satisfaction results, we are now going to include the agency's compliance to the prescribed 72-hour resolution period of all the complaints received through the 8888 in the contact center ng bayan. For the agency accountabilities, okay, you will notice the updating of the Citizens Charter is no longer an agency accountability requirement. But in 2022, we have additional 2 agency accountabilities, which is number 1, the designation of the Committee on the Anti-Red Tape, or the CART, and the agency's compliance with the National Competition Policy. So the details of these 2 new agency accountabilities will be discussed later by representatives from the ARTA and the Philippine Competition Commission. So the scoring scheme still the same in 2022, wherein each criteria has the same weight of 5 points and uses the same rating scale of 1 to 5, where 5 is the highest. Then the agency score for each criteria will be added up, and the maximum score that the agency can get is 100 points. If, for example, in all the 4 dimensions or criteria, nakuha nyo 5 points, 5 yung score nyo, so 25 points for each, so you get 100 points. As I mentioned also a while ago, to be eligible, you have to get at least 70 points. Okay? And then, yung reason po for the at least to get a rating of at least 4, kasi pag na-meet nyo naman po na 70 points in total score nyo, but you have certain criteria or conditions that did not get a rating of 4, then the agency must identify the unit or the person most responsible for the low rating of that particular criteria and they should be isolated from the grant of the PBB. So now let's go to the each criteria. So as mentioned also by the video, the performance result is still the same, and agencies must need to accomplish or achieve the Congress-approved performance targets under the Performance Informed Budgeting of the FY 2022 General Appropriations Act. So this is for the NGAs, GOCCs covered by DBM, and the SOCs. For the GOCCs covered by RA 10149, the physical targets are the approved FY 2022 performance scorecard. For LWDs and LGUs, the prescribed performance result and targets is going to be indicated in a separate guideline to be issued by this oversight agency. So going back to the NGAs, the achievement of the performance result is to be validated by the DBM. So the requirement here is for you to closely monitor your accomplishment through the submission of the Budget and Financial Accountability Reports through the DBM Unified Reporting System, or the URS. So you should submit this in a timely manner and update it in the URS, the BFARS. I'd also like to remind the agencies that deadline of the submission of this should be 30 days after the end of each quarter. So from this, the submission of the BFARS, the DBM will evaluate your accomplishment, and then the rating scale is still the same. To get a rating of 5, the agency should aim to meet each of the Congress-approved performance target for FY 2022. In case that you are not able to meet your targets, you may submit justifications together with your submissions of the BFARS to the Commission on Audit, the DBM, and the Bureau of Treasury as applicable through the DBM URS. Next slide. So now we go to the process result. So the process result, it's still the same. Each agency should report the ease of transaction of their core services. But yun nga, na-mention ko po kanina, okay, it has to be core services na external and internal, covering government to citizens, government to business, and government to government transactions. And the internal could be administrative and support services internal within the agency. So next slide. So the determination of the critical services will be as declared in the agency citizens charter, in line with the Anti-Red Tape Authority's whole of government re-engineering program. I think agencies are required to come up with a re-engineering manual. So yun po yung new for 2022. You just identify 2, but it should be a core external service and a critical also internal service. Next slide. Now, the ITA has their own definition in their MC 2019-02 on what is an external service and what is an internal service. So, ang critical po lang dito, ang external service are clients who do not form or belong to the government agency or the office. And the internal service are clients or individuals within the respective government agency or office. And na-mention din po kanina na the services may include but are not limited to back-end support services to regulatory functions related to permitting, licensing, and issuance of a privilege, right, reward, clearance, authorizing, or concession. Now, next slide. In selecting the critical services to be prioritized by the agency, there are also some factors that should be considered. Syempre, the agency cannot just like say, this is the core external services that we will be applying for the PBB. You should also consider that this service is a core service or a process needed to achieve your overall mission and objective of the public sector organization. The service may refer to those that are aligned with your mandate or your main function. It could also be the service that is most complained with the great number of complaints received by the agency and other complaints handling agencies. The service within the should also has the greatest number of pending transactions or backlogs that went beyond its prescribed processing time, as described in the agency citizens charter. So a service also that generates income or revenue for the government, or it could be attributable to the major final outputs or programs of your agency, and it also involves interagency action to complete the transaction. So these are the factors that may consider in selecting. I'm not sure lang po, but ARTA, who is the one who's validating this, for the purposes of the PBB, shall be also determining if the identified service by the agency is really a critical one, is a critical service or not. Kasi si ARTA naman po yung nag-oversight ng ating mga ng Citizens Charter or pag-review ng Citizens Charter. So next slide. So in reporting your accomplishments for the process result, the agency should highlight the tangible improvements from the viewpoint of the transacting public. So this is in terms of the turnaround time, reducing the transaction cost or the documentary requirements or other requirements. So to be able to establish that you were able to accomplish the process result targets, you may include any of the following as proof or evidences. It can be the ISO QMS certification or equivalent certification, the most current and updated Citizens Charter. You can also highlight the digitization initiatives by submitting a report or the accomplishment with the digital transformation of the agency for its external and internal services. Also, you can also submit, including with your accomplishment, your standard operating procedures or manuals or documentation of the service delivery standards for your frontline and non-frontline services. So again, this will be scored. The score of 5 will be given if the agency was able to achieve the substantial improvement to each transaction in the identified priority core services, yung external and internal service that was identified. But if the agency was only able to achieve or improve the services, the external, but it's a non-priority core service and non-priority internal services, the agency will just get a score of 4. Or if the service that was improved are only external services, it can be the agency will be given a score of 3. And if the agency did improvements to its transactions only for its internal services, the score is 2. And if the agency did not provide or show that it was able to improve or no substantial improvement was seen, then the score will be 1. For the financial results, similar to FY 2021, we still will look into the agency's disbursement PUR. And for the SOOCs, this will also include the attainment of the target for the 2022 earmarked income. So GOCCs and agencies with fund transfer shall likewise follow the formula for the disbursement PUR for GOCCs, as stated in MC 2022-1. So here is the formula of the disbursement PUR. Total disbursement, cash and non-cash, excluding personal services, net of payments made in 2022 for past year's obligations over total obligations. Next slide. So the financial results will be assessed and scored again on the actual disbursement BUR. So if your BUR was 80 to 100%, you get a score of 5. 60 to 79%, you get a score of 4. 40 to 59, you get a score of 3. 20 to 39, you get a score of 2. 1 to 19, you get a score of 1. Please note na we no longer ask for agencies to justify or explain why your budget utilization rate is just like, for example, you got a budget utilization rate of 75. We will no longer require agencies to submit explanation justification kasi straightforward na po yung pag-score nito. So it's just your BUR. Whatever your BUR, that will be your score for financial results. Okay. Next slide is the citizen client satisfaction results. Okay. So for the NGAs, GOCCs covered by DVM and SUCs, you will need to accomplish and submit your reports on your citizen client satisfaction results, the results of the survey or your feedback mechanism, and also the resolution of your complaints from the hotline 8888 in the contact center ng bayan. So yun pong client satisfaction survey or yung feedback na ginagamit ninyo, we have an Annex 5 in our guidelines that prescribes the content of that report. And then that will be the basis for determining your score for at least for the CCSS or the survey report. But that one is not the only determination of the this dimension, because we will also look at the resolution and the compliance to the 8888 and the contact center ng bayan. So agencies should ensure that the resolution of these complaints are done within the prescribed 72-hour period. Ang difference po nito as compared to 2021, in 2021, we only required agencies to ensure that all complaints received are resolved. So it's possible na yung na-receive po nila ng mga siguro January, na-resolve siya nung end of the year na. Pero may prescription po ang 8888 at ang CCB na dapat yung mga complaints na na-receive ninyo should have been resolved within 72 hours. So yun po ang idadagdag ngayon sa pag-determine ng citizen client satisfaction results. Now the score, if the agency was able to achieve a high satisfaction rate, yun po dun sa feedback mechanism, and also resolve the complaints, and the 100% of the complaints were resolved, and also 100% compliant dun sa 72-hour prescribed period, then you get a score of 5. However, kung hindi niyo po na-resolve yung at least 80% lang po ang na-comply ninyo within the 72-hour period, then your score will be 4. And if the agency got more than average rate in their client satisfaction feedback mechanism, and meron silang mga unresolved complaints, and at least 50% of the complaints received were not resolved within 72 hours, then your score is 3. And then yung 2, it is if the agency achieved an average satisfaction rate and meron din siyang mga unresolved complaints at hindi rin niya na-comply yung 72-hour prescribed period, then that is a score of 2. The agency without any report on their feedback mechanism, or did not conduct a CCSS, or was not able to resolve yung mga complaints na received dun sa 8888 and CCB, then your score will be 1. Okay. So, last na po ito yung sa agency accountability. So, we still have the usual, yung transparency seal, yung compliance to audit findings and liquidation of cash advances, the FOI, the procurement requirements. So, similar po to last year, these agency accountabilities are no longer what do you call this, eligibility requirements. Meaning, if meron po dito na hindi po ninyo na comply within the year, then the agency is still possible to be eligible for the PBB. However, kailangan na po mag-identify ng agency or the performance management team the unit or persons responsible for the non-compliance of this agency accountability. And then the performance management team or the agency, the head of the agency, will be the one to determine kung yun pong mga explanations, justifications are controllable or uncontrollable, or basta po kailangan kasi meron ma-identify kasi non-compliant po yung agency nito. Now, as mentioned po rin kanina, we have 2 new agency accountabilities. Next slide, please. So we have first the compliance of agencies on the designation of the Committee on Anti-Red Tape or the CART. And the other one is the adoption and implementation of the National Competition Policy. At this point, I would like to call on Director Grace Fernandez of ARTA to explain the compliance on the designation of the Committee on Anti-Red Tape. Director Grace.
Thank you, Director Ochi. But I think DG Perez is also here. Sir, would you like to say anything po muna?
Please go ahead, Alice. My connection is intermittent, not that strong.
Okay, sir.
Thank you,
All right.
committee, for the opportunity. Go ahead. Thank you, Alice.
All right. Thank you, sir. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Director Ochi, for the opportunity to share with you the requirements of one of the new requirements of the PBB, which is the Committee on Anti-Red Tape. So let me just give you a briefer on this one. So the first slide, please. The memorandum circular was issued to provide all government agencies with pertinent information, instructions, and guidelines informing a committee on anti-red tape or the CART to comply with Republic Act 11032 and its implementing rules and regulations. The guidelines were subjected to a public consultation in 2020 with inputs from the different national government agencies and local government units. Rule 3, Section 1 of the IRR of RA 11032, streamlining of government services, states that all agencies which provide government services shall undertake post-compliance analysis, conduct time and motion study, undergo evaluation and improvement of all their government services, and re-engineer the same if deemed necessary to reduce bureaucratic red tape and processing time and to promote efficiency and simplicity of processes. So the next slide, please. The issuance of the guidelines has been endorsed by the Ease of Doing Business and Anti-Red Tape Advisory Council in its meeting held on August 5, 2020, pursuant to Section 19 of RA 11032. Next slide. After that, we had a national rollout of the MC 2020-07, which was held on December 14, 2020, where several representatives from NGAs, LGU League, and the LGUs in different Metro Manila cities were invited. Okay, so what is the Committee on Anti-Red Tape or the CART that we have been referring to? The CART is a unit within a government agency or office tasked to ensure that the provisions of RA 11032, its implementing rules and regulations, and other related issuances by ARTA are strictly complied. It shall be an inter-office task force which requires no separate budget or the creation of new plantilla positions to facilitate its creation by the agency head. So it's internal po to the agency. Next slide. The memorandum circular shall apply to all government agencies, including state universities and colleges or the SUCs, LGUs, government-owned and controlled corporations, and other government instrumentalities, whether located in the Philippines or abroad, that provide services covering business or non-business related transactions as defined po in RA 11032 and its IRR. Next slide. All right, for the general guidelines on the composition of the CART shall be composed of a chairperson, vice chairperson, and at least 5 other members. For the chairperson po, it can be the head, head of the department, office, or agency, the president or administrator or CEO of GOCCs and SUCs, local chief executive, or an official who is designated by the head of the department or office or agency holding at least the 3rd level rank in the agency. For the vice chairperson po, it shall be the official designated by the head of agency and should at least be a rank lower than the designated chairperson po of the CART. Next slide. Okay, further as stated po in Section 3 of the Memorandum Circular, the agency may also designate a sub-cart in the respective regional or field office, attached agencies, and bureaus as necessary. Okay, next slide. For the members, members shall be composed of people who are institutionally tasked to identify, develop, implement, and review policies and monitor processes, which may include the following or their equivalent. So it can be the head of the office, division, or section or its equivalent. So example po for the NGAs, it can be the head of the policy, planning, or operations. Yan. Ito po yung mga example ng offices na po pwede nyo pong pagkuhanan ng mga heads ninyo. For the LGUs, it is the Sanggunian, Treasury, Administration, Assessor, Planning, yan, etc. GOCCs, it can be the head of the Human Resource, Internal Audit, Planning, Administration, Legal, and all. So they can comprise the members po of the card. Okay, next slide po. For the functions, I'll just go through it very briefly. For the function, the card shall ensure that agencies shall comply with the requirements, provisions of RA 11032, its IRR, and subsequent issuances by the authority. And the card shall ensure that the agency's compliance with the following functions stated in the Memorandum Circular. First, of course, conduct compliance cost analysis, time and motion studies, evaluation and improvements of the agency services. Those who underwent RIA po, alam po nila ito. Number 2, comply to the guidelines of the National Policy on Regulatory Management Systems, later on to be issued po by ARTA. Third, ensure that effective knowledge transfer or information dissemination among office employees on ARTA-related matters para po masabi nating alam lahat po ang mga issuances. 4, register new regulations. Ito po madalas nakakaligtaan. New regulations to UP owner and publish them at the official gazette. 5, set up and update the Citizens Charter. Every time po you have the streamlining done, the re-engineering, you have to reflect it po to the Citizens Charter. The same should be submitted to the Anti-Red Tape Authority. Later on po, we'll introduce po the RTPs. 6, monitor and review the agencies or Office of Citizens Charter. 7, ensure updates on the Citizens Charter are posted po, not later than March 31 of every year. Next slide. 8, ensure agency implementation of the zero contact policy. 9, ensure agency compliance with the 3720 processing time. 10, develop and foster a client feedback mechanism and client satisfaction measurement. Maglalabas na rin po ang ARTA ng harmonized CSM. 11, report to ARTA the results of the client satisfaction survey until the last working day of January of each year. 12, establish and manage public assistance complaints desk to effectively receive complaints and monitor customer satisfaction. 13, serve as coordinating body for the establishment of the e-boss or the electronic business one-stop shop of the agency. 14, coordinate and disseminate ARTA information, education, communication materials for public consumption. And of course, 15, perform other functions as duties and responsibilities under RA 11032. Okay, next slide. LGUs with existing regulatory reform team created under DILG ARTA 2019-01 shall recognize RRTs as the equivalent of CART and shall require the CART to perform additional functions provided in the guidelines. And the functions of the RRTs created under said JMC will be subsumed by the CART. Additional functions stated in the MC shall be added to the responsibilities stated in the JMC. For the compliance, next slide. Agency shall issue an office order designating the composition of the CART. An electronic copy of the said order with the CART directory, sa next slide po tayo, shall be submitted to us in ARTA through the compliance email. So requesting again everyone to make sure that an office order is being issued on this one, and the same should be submitted to ARC. Okay, do we have a next slide? Yes, that's done po. We need to have the office order. Next slide po. Ito lang, gusto ko lang po ipakita sa inyo yung submissions po ng CART from the time that the MC was issued up to now. So medyo mababa pa po ang submissions na nakukuha namin sa mga agencies. So konting reminder na lang po sa iba na hindi pa po nakapag-submit. Okay, last slide. Requesting lang everyone po to submit the CART requirement. Deadline of submission is on February 28, 2023. We shall be releasing a separate guidelines on the submission and validation of this requirement. Antabay na lang po, nililinis na lang po namin ang guidelines for your information. That's it po. Thank you very much, Director Oxy.
Okay, maraming salamat, Director Grace Fernandez from ALPA. Ngayon po, I would like to call on Executive Director Dr. Kenneth B. Tanate of the Philippine Competition Commission to explain for the National Competition Policy requirement. Sir?
Yes, okay. So good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to thank you, Director Ablan. So I'm going to present the National Competition Policy, or NCP, as part of PBB requirements this year. Next slide, please. So as a way of introduction and legal basis, next slide, please. So this proposal is in compliance with the issuance of Administrative Order number 44, directing the adoption and implementation of the NCP, or the National Competition Policy, consistent with the relevant provisions under the Philippine Competition Act, or Republic Act 10667. Next slide, please. Okay, so it may be noted that the scope and coverage in the adoption and implementation of AO 44 includes all national government agencies, including departments, bureaus, offices, and instrumentalities, GOCCs, as well as LGUs, the local government units. AO 44 also provides that the AO 25 Interagency Task Force, in coordination with the Civil Service Commission, the CES Board, and the DILG, are directed to integrate the adoption of and compliance with the NCP and its key elements as part of the PBB criteria for the grant of PBB to government personnel. Next slide, please. So the said AO 44 strengthens the Joint Memorandum Circular number 05/2020 issued by PCC and NEDA on the implementation of the NCP as part of efforts to improve consumer welfare and market efficiency. The NCP aims to steer regulations and administrative procedures of government agencies to level the economic playing field through the adoption and compliance with pro-competitive policies and government interventions, competitive neutrality, and enforcement of competition-related laws and issuances. Next slide, please. So, okay, so we note that the competition law and policy, or competition concept and principles, are relatively new in the Philippines, that for purposes of integrating the adoption of and compliance with the NCP as part of the PBB requirements for the grant of PBB, we will introduce the requirements in a gradual manner. Hence, the PBB guidelines on competition took into consideration the priority sectors identified by the PCC for fiscal year 2022. This is also based on the World Bank study, the priority sectors, wherein the selected agencies under such sectors serve as the initial coverage of the PBB requirement. Thus, for 2022 PBB, the requirement is simplified to only one main requirement, which is reviewed at least one policy, issuance, rules, and or regulations relevant to market competition based on application of competition impact assessment or CIA to be submitted by November 30, 2022. However, in order for agencies, participating agencies, to comply with these main requirements, they need to undertake the requisite activities, such as the designation of a focal person or unit for the NCP implementation. So, madali lang naman yan na mag-designate ng focal person. And then, number two is attendance of the focal person and his or her team to trainings on competition impact assessment or CIA tool and other competition law related seminars. And number three is just a preparation of a list of agencies' policy issuances, rules, and or regulations relevant to market competition. So kung ang issuance hindi naman may effect sa market, so wag nyo nang isama yun. So for the training or seminar on the CIA tool or the competition impact assessment tool, the focal person can attend the regulatory impact assessment training being provided by the DAP, with a module on CIA. And actually, a RIA also is being promoted by ARSA, where the output of that training on CIA or the competition impact assessment, there will be a training exercise that will be part of that training, and which you will apply the CIA in that at least one policy or issuance of your agency. So, so the result of that attendance to seminar, at least you have reviewed one policy, issuance, rules, and regulations relevant to market competition based on the application of CIA to be submitted by November 30. So that's the requirement. The PCC is also developing an online training module on a CIA tool where interested personnel or concerned agencies can just access our website and self-study the training module. So once this is completed, we'll just inform the participating agencies on the availability of this module through our website. Next slide, please. So in case the agency has no policy issuance or rules and or regulations that are relevant to competition or could affect competition or distort competition in the market, a certification signed by the head of agency stating that there is none shall be submitted. For next slide, please. So, so for the initial agencies, that are covered by the NCP requirement for the PBB based on the priority sectors and relevant sector regulators, we have chosen 50 agencies for these. And these are, as shown on the slide, these are the priority sectors. We have water, health or pharmaceutical, food and agriculture, energy or electricity, telecommunications, insurance, construction, e-commerce, and employment placement. So we are also including here other sector regulators for to further build our partnership with them. So next slide, please. So here we have selected these agencies under water, health, and food and agriculture sectors. Next slide, please. So, and we have here the agencies under energy, telecommunications, insurance, construction, and e-commerce. Next slide, please. And under employment placement and other sector regulators. So I just want to clarify that, for example, in the application of the competition impact assessment, and if you find that there is possible concern on the provision of that particular issuance, it does not mean that the agency is disqualified from the PBB. So if you find after applying the CIA tool, you can just submit that to us, and maybe next year we can sit down together and discuss on how to address that particular issuance or policy of your agency, and how to improve that issuance. So I think that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Executive Director Kenneth Tanate from the Philippine Competition Commission. So I'll just would like to go back to what we presented a while ago. Slide before this, please. This slide. Yeah. So this is just a summary on the highlights of the changes. Actually, pinakita na po ito kanina, so i-repeat ko lang po. So the changes for the 2022 PBB is for the process results, instead of all of the transaction or all of the services of the agencies, you just need to select 2 critical services. And then for the client satisfaction results, we will now be looking at the compliance with the 72-hour prescribed period. For the agency accountability, the updating of the Citizens Charter is no longer an agency accountability requirement. And now we have 2 new agency accountabilities, and that's the compliance with the designation of the agency's Committee on Anti-Red Tape, or the CART, and the compliance with the National Competition Policy. Thank you. So my last slide is on the timelines of the submission of the requirements. So agencies should submit evidences of the accomplishments on or before February 28. So, you know, yung explanation ko kanina, yung performance results, quarterly naman that the agency submits the BFARs to the URS. So it's possible na every quarter, you need to include yung mga explanations dun sa remarks portion dun sa BFAR. But if you will look at the overall year accomplishment, and then there is some indicators there that you were not able to meet, that's when you will be submitting yung explanation ninyo for not achieving the targets. And then the financial results, the budget utilization rate, actually, na-mention ko na po kanina, you don't need to submit any explanations or justifications, because the actual BUR will be the basis for the determination of your score for the financial result. For the process result, I identified several possible evidences that you need to submit to support yung claims niyo dun sa accomplishment for the process result. And the citizen client satisfaction result, you need to submit the results of your CCSS or your feedback mechanism. So all of this should be submitted to the AO25 on or before February 28. You can submit yung electronic submission, but it should be an official submission na pwede siyang scan copy. And yun pong kailangan din namin yung mga editable files, because when we do the assessment, we will be referring to them. Reminder to the agencies to ensure that all explanations and justifications for deficiencies are already attached in your submission. You are encouraged to provide the AO25 yung compliance ninyo dun sa agency accountabilities. As was mentioned, these are no longer eligibility requirements, but if ever the agency was found to be non-compliant, kailangan pong mag-submit kasi ng mag-identify ng unit or person responsible for this deficiency. And there's a reminder here from the DBM that the agency shall be responsible for the review and updating of their respective personal services, itemization, and criteria of personnel under the DBM GMIS. So that's it. I will turn you back to Selena.
Thank you, Director Ablan. We hope that everyone learned a lot from the discussions of Director Ablan, Director Fernandez, and ED Tanate. Before we proceed to the Q&A portion of our program, we'll first have a 10-minute health break. The time now is 3:15, and we'll see you once again in 10 minutes. Everyone, and welcome back to our program. Even with everything that we've heard this afternoon, I'm sure that our active PBB focal persons still have questions or clarifications in mind. At this point, we have also collected the questions you have sent through our link and through the comments section of our live stream. To moderate the much-awaited Q&A portion, I would like to call on Ms. Nadine Victoria Malapira.
Everyone. So as much as we want to accommodate all of the questions that we have gathered from YouTube and Facebook, I believe there are now more than 2,000 watching us right now via YouTube and around 1,000 via Facebook. We will limit our question since we are also observing the orientation duration for this afternoon. Again, we would like to remind everyone that questions and clarifications specific to your agencies must be sent to our email, ao25secretariat@dap.edu.ph. So this afternoon, our technical working group members and representatives from the validating agencies are here with us to assist us in answering the questions of our audience or PBB focal persons. So this is the much awaited portion of our orientation. Let's now proceed with our question number 1. From the Office of the Vice President, will an employee be eligible for the grant of the PBB in the following scenario? So employee A got a satisfactory rating for the first semester and a very satisfactory rating for the second semester of FY 2022. And employee B got a very satisfactory rating during his stint at Agency 1. Within the fiscal year, he transferred to another agency and received a satisfactory rating. So parang meron po siyang magkaibang rating for the 2 semesters. Ang tanong po ng Office of the Vice President ay magiging eligible pa rin kaya yung employee na merong magkaibang satisfactory rating for the 2 semesters given the scenarios flash on the screen. Maybe our technical working group can help us answer this question, or from the Civil Service Commission.
Yes. Hi, Nadine.
Hi, Director Grace. Good afternoon.
Yes. Good afternoon too. Yes. For the first scenario, regarding if there are 2 different ratings, I think the average rating for the 2 semesters would be the consideration in determining whether the employee has achieved the required very satisfactory rating. Because we can liken it to in previous cycles when we look at the ranking of the offices. When we rank offices, we take into consideration the ratings for the 2 semesters or the overall rating. And this is also the consideration that when we compute an overall rating for a given year of an employee, we usually average the first and second semester. Now, for the second scenario, I think this could be discussed at the level of the technical working group. If how are we going to treat this kind of scenario? Because in the earlier orientation, it was mentioned that the employee will get his or her PBB in the agency wherein he or she serves the longest, right? So we have to determine if we are going to apply an overall rating as to the performance of the employee, or if we are going to consider what would be his or her rating in the agency where he or she serves the longest. Now, given that the guidelines is silent, I think we could leave this to the determination of the technical working group if we would encounter such such a situation, no? Kasi syempre the key here is to determine the contribution, no, of the employee, no, to the achievement of the agency target. So if we are going to consider the agency where he or she serves the longest, then we should also consider what would be the rating. So I think it would be the second situation. I think we leave it to the determination of the technical working group, no, because it's quite a unique situation and it's not covered by our guidelines. Okay, thank you, Nadine.
For that explanation. Okay, let's proceed to the next question. So under section 4.1A, performance results, what will be the target of the GOCCs covered by the DBM but not under the General Appropriations Act or not sourcing funds from the national government? So this question was submitted by the Philippine Economic Zone Authority. So they're asking about the targets of the GOCCs covered by the DBM but not under the GAA, the 2022 GAA. So anybody from our technical working group can answer this question. Okay, anyone from the DBM, Department of Budget and Management, please. Walang may...
Nadine, this is Gerald.
Director Gerald, good afternoon.
Good afternoon to our participants in this orientation. PESA is a government-owned and controlled corporation, and it's under our Budget and Management Bureau C. So I'm not sure if Budget and Management Bureau C is represented in this meeting. So we'll just take note of the concern, and probably Nadine, AO25 Secretariat, could refer the query to BMBC for appropriate response. Thank you.
Director Handa for your assistance. So the AO25 Secretariat will just take note of this question and will forward it to the BMBC. And we'll get back to PESA regarding this question. Okay, let's proceed to the next question. Oh, from Philippine Charity Sweepstakes Office. Are GOCCs covered by Republic Act 10149 required to submit the documents for the process and financial results to the AO25? Okay. Maybe the GCG, a representative from the GCG can answer this question.
Hi, good afternoon. So essentially the question is whether the AO25 will require it. No? So the Governance Commission at least does not require the GOCCs it covers to submit it to the AO25. The contents of the process and financial results is already integrated into the performance scorecards of GOCCs.
Very much, sir, for answering that question. Okay, next question. From DOST STII, regarding financial results under Section 4.3.3, does this include trust fund releases for grants in aid projects? So, yung daw kanilang financial results, may include ba doon yung trust fund releases nila for their programs in grants in aid? Again, from the DBM, if someone can answer. Pero I think this is more on more specific to their agency. So we can just forward this to the AO25 and to the DBM, and then we'll just get back to the DOST. Okay, so we have here questions under process results. Parang naka-lump na siya from 3 agencies. So one from the National Telecommunications Commission. Will the agency only include 2 critical services, 1 core service external, and 1 support administrative service internal in the form? And then from AFAB, is it necessary to meet all the factors stipulated, or is it within the agency's discretion to choose among the factors? Since we have new targets for under the process results for 2022 PBB. And then from PEZA, is the SOP manual a separate report, or is this the same as the modified Form A? Is this different from the Citizens Charter? Okay, so anyone from our AO25 Technical Working Group, maybe Director Ablan can start answering po, ma'am. The first question from NTC.
Yun pong process result right now, we are only looking at yung 2 critical services, yung core external and 1 yung internal. And ang magbabalidate po ng process result for 2022 will be ARTA.
Yes, and maybe our members from ARTA can also provide insights in answering the following questions. Sino ba? From ARTA po, meron pong mag-answer or... So yung first question natin was already answered na, ma'am. And then yung question na lang ni AFAB and PEZA. Miss Ochi, are you going to say something?
Ang alam ko kasi nga the way kaya nilagay yung mga requirements ng paano pag-select ng critical service, it's for the agencies to be able to zoom in identifying yung core service talaga. So kaya nga I was hoping si Arta, ang ano po doon kasi is it could be hindi lahat yung mga sinulat doon, but it also would prevent kasi the agencies from selecting a simple or a service that is not critical to them. Kaya nilagay po yung parang definition na yun. And then yun pong mga evidence. So is the SOP manual a separate report, or is this the same as the modified Form A1? Form A. Actually, yung Form A, yun po yung nalagay kung ano yung improvement na naginawa ninyo. Parang it's like a description of what were the improvements. You put it in the Form A. The evidences, like the SOP manual, will support what you implemented dun sa improvements na naginawa niyo for the process result.
Director Ablan for answering the questions. Proceed to the next question from University of Antique. Selecting 2 critical services is done annually. Is selecting 2 critical services done annually or every PBB cycle? Or once selected, will it be the permanent services submitted for evaluation of our process result? So is selecting 2 critical services done annually or every PBB cycle? Or once selected, will it be the permanent services submitted for evaluation of our process result? Yes, yes po, SVP Mendoza. Ms. Dedeng.
Yeah, tungkol sa selection ng core service and support service or external and internal services, yung requirement to select one external and another one internal only applies sa 2022 PBB cycle. So yung guideline for the subsequent years, no, will have to be issued sa subsequent years. So although mino-monitor naman ng ARTA yung mga submissions ng mga agencies. So itong two critical services na to applies for 2022 cycle.
SVP Mendoza for clarifying that. Okay, let's proceed to our next question. Under citizen client satisfaction results, is it required to include all the 8 service quality dimensions as identified in item 5.1 or yung annex natin, guide in conducting the CCSS? This is a question from the NTC. So required po ba na lahat ma-include yung all identified doon na 8 SQDs, yung service quality dimensions? Yes po, Director Ablan.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yun pong mga service dun sa pag-conduct ng citizen client satisfaction. Since 2020, we already use yung parang prescribed parang pag-conduct ng CCSS. And yung 8 quality dimensions, yun din po yung prescribed. If some of the dimensions are not applicable, then you just need to explain po why it's not applicable to you. Example po yung cost, like some agencies naman, they do not require cost. So that dimension is not applicable to them. So ina-explain po yun. Ganun din naman po yun since 2020.
Okay, next questions. So, ano po, live pa rin po, pwede pa rin po kayo mag-send ng inyong questions. Just type on the comment box of our YouTube page and Facebook page po, live po doon. So, we'll be able to capture your questions. So, our next question is, in the CCSS, our college has our own feedback form. Can we use this form instead of using the rating scale provided by the AO25? So this question was sent by Davao del Norte State College. Okay.
Ako ba ulit?
Hello? So anyone from our technical working group can answer this question po. So ang tanong po ay kung pwede raw po nilang gamitin yung kanilang sariling feedback form instead of the one we have prescribed sa ating guidelines. Yes po, SVP Mendoza, ma'am.
Hindi ko yata naibaba yung hand. Pero at any rate, I think it would be good kung mag-adapt na yung Davao del Norte State College doon sa suggested, recommended process and rating scale na ginagamit doon sa citizen or client satisfaction results for consistency with other agencies, tsaka is in evaluating whether na-meet ba nila yung requirement or not as to doon sa level of satisfaction ng clients nila doon sa kanilang mga services. Meron pa naman sigurong time para mag-adjust yung SUC. So suggestion namin yun kasi even ARTA mentioned earlier na meron din initiative from the ARTA na mag-harmonize at mag-issue ng isang guideline on the conduct of citizen or client satisfaction. But for the purpose of evaluating also yung eligibility to the PBB, it would be good kung i-observe na rin natin yung suggestion, no? As mentioned by Director Ochi, a few years back na-issue yung parang suggested procedure by the IATF on the conduct of the citizen and client satisfaction.
SVP Mendoza. Okay. So next question, please. From PVAO. For the required 2 critical services, should the external and internal services selected be interrelated? So dapat daw po ba ay interrelated yung mapipiling 2 critical services, external and internal, for 2022 PBB? So again, anyone from our technical working group can answer this question. Sige po. From ARTA po or from the AO 25?
Nadine?
Yes, I'll
Yes,
call,
yeah.
is that Director Grace, ma'am? Ma'am, okay po.
Yes po, yes po. Oo. Ms. Nadine, di naman kailangan related. Basta pasok po siya dun sa critical service. But if they decide to choose man, interrelated, maganda rin naman kasi makikita mo yung makikita mo ang mas malaking impact. But it's not really required.
Ma'am, I saw SVP Mendoza raised her hand po ulit. Ma'am, if you may add po.
Actually, sumagot na si Director Grace Arta. I have the same response, but I think the agency should make sure na critical services talaga meeting yung mga conditions of a critical service as indicated in the guidelines. And then yung selection ng internal service is really up to the agency kasi baka meron ding internal service na internally naman is the most complained about the internal service. Pwede din naman yun yung i-prioritize. But then kunyari nga sa external and doon sa internal service, yung supporting service sa mga regulatory functions ng agency or doon sa mga processes related to the issuance ng mga permits and the like, ibig sabihin complementary sila. Siyempre, mas maganda yung magiging impact noon. Siguro mas magiging substantive yung magiging result ng process improvement of the agency.
Very much, ma'am and Director Grace. Okay, for our next question, medyo mahaba ito Okay, from DOST PNRI. The CART, okay, for ARTA ito ulit. The CART or the Committee on Anti-Red Tape has a very long list of duties and tasks, and it has been contentious to our agency how we will be able to execute all the tasks listed without additional positions designated. We are a very small agency and each position counts. Is it possible that the duties of the CART be reduced, and can you give concrete examples on how each task can be implemented by each agency without an additional plantilla position or even COS position? Okay po. So we'll give Arta siguro few seconds to digest this question. Medyo mahaba siya. Arta or Director Grace, you can just free to answer po this question, ma'am. Thank you.
Hi, Miss Nadine, medyo mahabang ano.
Just free
Paano ba?
to...
Of course, ideally, the CART, the committee, no, if it is already created in the agency, it does not, well, initially, it does not really require additional positions, meaning within the agency yung tao na ina-identify natin dito. The principle behind it is, of course, kung meron pong nakakaalam ng pwedeng pinagmulan or issues that can be resolved, no, it will always be the same people also inside who can probably come up with possible solutions and find ways on how they can really address, let's say if it's an issue or something that they need to implement internally. But they are not naman prevented from requesting, let's say lang, if they really see or the need to, request for additional position. In case lang naman talagang loaded and all, they can propose and see if it can be granted. Hindi naman po natin nire-restrict ang agencies na wag mag-propose o mag-request. They can, but yun muna po siguro is to explore everything inside the agency, all resources available on how they can implement or how they can run the CART within themselves first. Sige, we'll look at po other agencies with CART. Yung hinihingi po nilang example, we'll get in touch po with UST and find a way on how we can give them the examples they're asking. No? Sige, tignan po muna namin yung resources na meron kami ngayon.
Thank you very much, Director Grace. So we'll just forward na lang the question of the UST to ARTA. Okay, thank you po. Next question, please. Okay, another, related na rin to, no, dapat from PNRI. Is there a need to have a separate CART at the regional office, aside from having one sa central office? So ma'am, this is for big agencies, applicable din siya for agencies with ROs and satellite offices. So kailangan po ba ma'am may separate CART pa? Or pwedeng yung nasa central office na daw po?
Actually, ma'am, option po nila yon if they would like to have a separate or what we call a sub-CART. Pwede naman po yun. Depende sa depende po sa laki din ng agency. Kung mas magiging madali for them para sa communication and all, then they're not prevented from having a sub-CART po.
Thank you, ma'am. Next question. From the Department of Justice, what would be the CCS results score if the agency has a 100% resolution rate, but their compliance rate is less than 80%? Okay, so are they pertaining to, maybe they are pertaining to the Hotline 888 and CCB complaints, resolution rate versus compliance rate. So under, maybe we can flash the rating scale for the CCSS for reference po. Question ni DOJ is, if ang na-meet niya is 100% resolution rate, tapos 80% of compliance rate lang, saan magfo-fall ang score niya under citizen client satisfaction results? So anyone po from our PWG can answer this question.
I think Nadine, naka-flash naman sa screen. So kung yung compliance rate niya is the complaints resolved, yun ba yung, or yung compliance rate ba niya ang
100% ma'am is yung resolution rate, and what?
100% compliance, less than 80.
yung question niya, 100%
Percent
resolution.
resolution, and then yung compliance niya is less than 80%. Tama?
Less than 8% yung...
Yes, ma'am.
hindi
Less than. Not at least less than.
mapupunta na siya sa lower grade. Kasi yung, di ba dito, yun na yung 100% resolution and at least 80% yung compliance rate.
Miss Deng, need pa pong malaman kung ano yung kanyang
Of course,
CCSS report.
yung result ng actual citizen transfer, may assumption na high satisfaction yun. Kaya lang yung sa kanya, less than 80% yung compliance rate. So pag hindi na-meet yung criteria dun sa number 4, less than 4 na talaga yun. Diba? Kasi minimum na yung nakalagay doon sa yung 4 points doon sa, if you flash back yung, if you flash back the slide kanina.
Flashback. Ma'am, yung rating scale natin.
Yeah, that's right, di ba? So the rating scale shows yung minimum to be able to achieve a score of 4, in this case, high satisfaction rate, 100% resolution, and at least 80% compliance doon sa 88 and CCB.
Siguro, they're only clarifying kasi kapag nasa 4 na siya magfo-fall but less than 80% yung compliance rate. Because yung number 3 kasi is at least 50% na lang yung nakalagay. But with unresolved na kasi yun. With unresolved complaints.
That is the minimum that you need to get a 3.
Okay, ma'am. Sige po. Thank you po, ma'am, for clarifying that. So we'll proceed to our next question. Okay, from Davao del Norte State College. So are SOCs required to comply the NCP, yung National Competition Policy ng Philippine Competition Commission? So required daw po ba yung mga SOCs doon sa NCP? Pag-comply sa NCP? So anyone po from the Philippine Competition Commission? Yes, sir.
Yes, good afternoon, Mayor. Thank you for the question. The issues is, as of now, is not required to comply with the NCP because we are, for this year, we are only focusing on 10 sectors, the water, health, pharmaceutical. So there's no education under these priority sectors as of now. So they are not covered for this year. Thank you.
To Edita natin, we would also like to remind all the PBB focal persons, we have included a list po from the Philippine Competition Commission under Annex 9, yung list of agencies covered by the NCP or those who should comply for this requirement, to this requirement. So makikita nyo po doon kung kasama kayo sa list or hindi. And then I believe there's another form naman kapag hindi kayo required to submit, but you still have to comply on something on a form po. Kailangan pa ring i-declare yun. So that's under Annex 9, 9.1, and 9.2. Okay, thank you po. So our next question is from Marina. If our agency is not listed in Annex 9, ito nga, shall we still comply to the requirement to National Competition Policy, yung NCP? Si Marina, yes sir.
Yes, they're not required actually, but if they want to know about competition impact assessment so that they will be ready for the next batch of agencies that will be part of the requirement, then they can join voluntarily or participate voluntarily. But if they are not in the list of part of agencies, then they are not required. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next question. Okay. From the Institute for Labor Studies, what is considered as average or high satisfaction rate? May specific targets po ba on this? So anyone po from our TWG can answer this question. Or si SVP Mendoza, ma'am, baka pwede po natin ulit i-clarify.
Can we request Director
Si Director Ablan, can you help us out po?
yung recommend or sinuggest ng IE sa previous?
Yun po kasi kung gagamitin po yung ating prescribed na 5-point Likert scale, so yung satisfactory is nasa 3. Tapos yung 4 and 5, yun po yung high satisfaction. Tapos yung isa is yung very satisfactory or excellent. So kung kukunin niyo po yung average, 3 yung average. Tapos 4 and 5 yun yung high.
For answering this question. So next question po from the National Wages and Productivity Commission. To whom and where shall we submit our certificate of no policy issuances, rules or regulations relevant to market competition? So this is for the Philippine Competition Commission po. Question. Sir? Kanino daw po isasubmit, to whom and where kailangan isubmit yung kanilang certificate of no policy issuances, rules or regulations relevant to market competition? Yes, sir.
Yeah, sorry, Nadine. Yes, they can submit to me, the Executive Director, Office of the Executive Director. Maybe we can just my colleague can just type the address in the chat box now, or I can write it in the chat box na lang. So they can write their compliance to me, no, the Executive Director. And will provide the address.
Sir. Okay. So, next question po. So don't worry po, the AU25 Secretariat will provide you the information on where to submit yung inyong forms to the Philippine Competition Commission. So our next question, again from the NTC. Regarding the maintenance, updating of the agency transparency seal, so this is under the agency accountabilities. Is there a required number of years that should be maintained or posted? For example, for the annual financial reports, approved budgets and targets, annual procurement plan, etc. So, meron daw po bang required number of years that should be maintained or posted? So, maybe our member or representative from the DBM OCIO. Ay, ano ba to? GPPB pala. Okay. Is there a required number of years?
OCIO.
Okay. Nalipat ka. Is there anyone po who will answer this question from our validating agencies?
Miss Nadine.
Afternoon po.
Yeah, good afternoon. Salve from DBM OCIO. Actually, for the annual financial reports, we usually validate kung ano yung current year, no? So kung nakapost naman sa transparency seal nila yung mga prior years nila, mas maganda. Mas maganda naman. Pero kapag binavalidate namin sila kung ano lang yung current year.
Thank you very much, ma'am, for clarifying that. Thank you, Ms. Salve. Okay, our next question. If an agency is a GOCC under DBM, does it automatically follow that the Form 1.0 will be accomplished in manual form? When is the deadline for submission? So this question was sent by PEZA. So again, if an agency is a GOCC under DBM, does it automatically follow that the Form 1.0 will be accomplished in manual form? And when is the deadline daw po for submission? Sir, si Director Handa, sir, are you still there po? From DBM, OPCCB? Okay.
PESA is a GOCC, so
GOCC,
appropriate
opo.
bureau is Bureau C.
Bureau C. Thank you, sir. From Bureau C po, do we have representatives? So maybe we'll just forward PEZA's question. Ano yun? So we would just like to acknowledge the presence of the AO25 IETF Chair, Yusek Kim De Leon. Good afternoon, sir.
Hi, good afternoon, Nadine.
Hello po. Saktong-sakto si sir for our Q&A. Hi, sir. Okay, our next question po. Okay, so under section 8.6 mentions Annex 10 or the report on ranking of the office delivery units, while the Annex 10 attached to the MC is entitled Report on Eligibility of Agency for the Grant of the 2022 Performance-Based Bonus. Are they one and the same? Yes po, kami na lang po sasagot from the Secretariat. This is the same form naman po. It's just that nagkaroon lang ng modification dun sa title, but it's the same form. It's one and the same. Thank you. So next question po. Based on the form, there is a column for amount of the PBB, and the said form shall be submitted on February 28, 2022 or 2023. Given that, may I ask how can we come up with the amount of the PBB if there is no validation result yet, as that is based on the total score of the agency? This question was sent by the DSWD. So I believe they're pertaining to Form 1.0. So anyone po can answer this question? Anyone from RTWG and from the DBM?
Yes, Nadine, if I may take on this.
Yes po, Yusek. Thank you po.
As we usually do naman, even in the past cycles, yung ating Form 1.0, which is currently renumbered as Annex 10, di ba? Is being prepared once is being submitted once there's already a validation report. So maybe we'll just have to recalibrate the timelines to make sure that the updated Form 1.0 is to be submitted to us once the final score is obtained or validated by DTWG.
Thank you, Yusek De Leon. Thank you, sir. Next question po. On isolation of responsible delivery unit. Okay, from ILS. If ever merong isang unsubmitted report under agency accountability, for example, yung APP CSE, sino po ang dapat ma-isolate? Is it the procurement unit or the whole finance and admin division? Okay. Sige, sino pong sasagot dito on isolation? Po from RTWG can answer this question.
Nadine, good afternoon again. So to answer the question of ILS, it's still the agency has flexibility in determining the most responsible unit or personnel regarding the deficiency of the agency. So if the agency deems it that the responsible person would be the whole FAAD or simply the procurement unit, then during the validation process, after the validation process and during the processing of the PBB by the DBM o PCCB, we are coordinating with the agency concerned, and the agency concerned is providing us the list of personnel that will be excluded in the grant of the PBB for that year. So the agency has discretion for this, provided that they will identify the most responsible unit or personnel. Thank you. I think Yusek came.
Okay, sir. Yes.
You will add Yusek? Nakamute ka po, sir.
Thank you, Director Gerald. I would just like to confirm and affirm that, but add on something. I think for the 2022 guidelines, you made it very particular that in the isolation, we include the head of the responsible unit. So not only the individual concerned, but the head of the unit, the most responsible unit to be identified by the agency. That's all. Thank you.
For that. So we'll proceed to our next question. Thank you, Director Gerald and USEC team. From the DOT, if we are using a 4-point Likert scale for the CCS, is it safe to assume that the operational definition of the average and high satisfaction rating is equivalent to an average score of 3 and 4 respectively? I think this is related sa question kanina dun sa definition of average and high satisfaction rating. So anyone po from RTWG can answer. Po. Si Miss Dedeng. Sige po. Ma'am, SVP Mendoza.
I-try ko sagutin kasi siguro tanong din natin sa DOT, bakit despite the guidelines issued by the IATF to adapt sana yung recommended na scale for the client satisfaction, they still maintain itong 1 to 4. Of course, may discretion, in this case, ginamit ng agency yung discretion na mag-adapt siya ng sarili niyang rating scale. But I cannot give a parang straightforward answer na yung 3 will be considered as average and very good will be considered as high. Kasi siguro yung parang kung isasubmit to ng agency, pag-usapan pa nung composite team kung hindi ka pareho nung sa general guidelines yung scale na ginagamit ng agency. Alin yung i-consider nilang equivalent.
Thank you very much, SVP Mendoza. Okay, next question po. Again from ILS, what is considered as substantial improvements? So the question is under process results po. Okay. So ano daw po ba yung definition or ano yung mako-consider na substantial improvement under process results. So our 2022 targets po sa process results ay substantial improvement po sa dalawang critical services, one external and internal. So anyone from RTWG can answer this question.
Nadine, I'll try to venture to answer this question.
Sige po, sir.
This is something about process results, right? So substantial improvement has to refer to either of the things that we have mentioned in the circular, like standardization, digitization or digitalization, or definitely re-engineering of the process. So if any of the improvements to be submitted by the agency will fall under any of those categories, we'll consider them as substantial improvements. And of course, we look forward to really receiving submissions for critical frontline services. That's why we emphasize that in the particular, in the 2022 guidelines. So we're really looking forward to something that is an improvement of a critical frontline and some internal process of the agency to make sure that there will be changes that will be felt not only by the internal employees or officials of the agency, but most importantly, the receiving public. Thank you, Nadine.
Sir, thank you, Yusek. We have a question here from the DILG. May we request the DBM to get the feedback from agencies encountering problems with BFARS submission beyond the agency's control due to system errors? There's a tech problem with the system that might affect the submission of BFARS. Sorry, we can't flash on the screen yung question, pero ito po yung question nila. Pertaining to the BFARS submissions, kapag may tech problem with the system that might affect the submission of BFARS.
Okay, I'll take on that question, Nadine. If this is something that has to do with the submission of the BFARS through the Unified Reporting System, the advice that we usually give the agencies is for them to immediately submit tickets. Their respective focal persons know how to lodge their respective tickets should they encounter technical difficulties, but rest assured that we are seriously taking and monitoring the activities of the system, and I have given advice to our ICT unit to make sure that for the particular deadline for submission of BFARS after the end of every quarter, we are boosting the capacity of the system to reduce the technical difficulty. But nevertheless, we highly encourage our agencies not to submit their reports on the last minute of the deadline. I think we have 15 days after the end of every quarter, for 15 or 30 days, if I'm not mistaken, after the end of every quarter for the submission of the deadline. So if we can submit as early as possible, then well and good. But just in case the system will be clogged in the later part of the deadline, we are boosting our software and hardware to make sure we'll be meeting the demands of the submitting agencies. Thank you, Nadine.
Sec De Leon. Okay. So we still have quite a number of questions po. So we hope na nandyan pa rin po kayo and still watching us live via YouTube and Facebook. So on the process results, instead of reporting significant improvements in one core and one internal service, can we only report substantial improvements in 2 core external services to get a score of 5? So this is a question sent by PIDS, Philippine Institute for Development Studies. So yung question niya ay, instead of reporting the improvements in one core and one internal, so magiging 2 core na external services daw po ang naisip nila na i-report for 2022. So is this possible daw po? Is it possible to get a score of 5 if ganito yung scenario ng kanilang isisend? Okay. So anyone po again from our technical working group can answer this question. So sa ating audience, no, this is your chance to send in your questions or kung may gusto po kayong i-clarify na questions for the 2022 PB. Yes po, SVP Mendoza, ma'am.
Alam ko gustong sumagot ni Yusek Kim tsaka ng Arta. Pero
Go ahead, Ma'am Deden, go ahead.
okay, nauna lang ako mag-raise ng hand. Na-issue na natin yung guideline. Although PIDS can submit yung kung gusto niya ng 2 core, pero required pa din yung isang internal. Kasi yung principle natin dito, we focus both on improvement of our critical services to our external clients and also internal clients. So, ano pa din, hahanapan pa rin natin siya sa critical internal service para makascore siya ng 5. And assuming na substantial yung improvement niya in both the internal and external services.
And if I may add, Nadine, thank you very much. Pinauna ko na si Miss Dedeng. I see her smile, kaya alam kong mauuna na siya sumagot dito. If you will notice, from as compared to our previous guidelines, our process result for the prior year guidelines look at all the processes under the Citizens Charter. And kaya yung ibang mga agencies ay hindi nakakapasa because we look at all the services as declared in the Citizens Charter. And for 2022, as mentioned by SVP Mendoza, we're just asking agencies to submit or choose 1 external and 1 internal. So ito na yung kumbaga best foot forward ng agency na pwede natin maipagmalaki that the agency has undertaken re-engineering, standardization, digitization of particular services that they deliver both for the external transacting public and internally for the respective agencies. So pag dumami na kasi yung iteration, medyo mahihirapan na yung composite team to consider na baka susunod na question dyan, pwede bang 2 internal lang, wala namang external. But I go back to the response ni Ma'am Dedeng, na we look at it together, yung pag-deliver natin ng services for the external clients and the improvement of our internal processes. That's why we're asking agencies to submit at least 1. But if PIDS will submit 2 external services plus 1 internal, then so much the better. The technical working group will assess both of them, all of them. Thank you.
Thank you very much po, Yusek De Leon and SVP Mendoza for answering our question. Okay, our next question, please. Still under process result po, from PNRI. Should the improvement in the critical service be substantial from 2021 to 2022? Or shall we report a critical service that we have digitalized since 2019, and only minimal improvements have been made in this service in 2022, but the service is very good already, or improved na po siguro ang meaning ng PNRI because of the continuous improvements made annually? Ano po ang sasagot? From Arta or from Yusek and SVP Mendoza?
Pero while waiting for Arta, I will just try to pose a counter question. Are we just referring to one service that the agency is delivering to its clientele? Because if there's already one critical service that's been improved substantially for the past years, maybe there are other external services that needs further improvement or strengthening or engineering, that the agency can take this opportunity to look at that particular service. Yun yung unang nakita ko dito sa question na to. We might not have just one critical service. Maganda po kung meron na tayong isang critical service that we have substantially improved in the past year. So kung ang tanong is pwede pa ba namin ito ma-report, ang sagot ko po dyan baka meron pa tayong ibang critical service na pwede nating ma-improve which ito na yung i-report natin for the 2022 PBB. Because I go back to the earlier message I gave, yung PBB is not just a plain bonus. It's an incentive for excellence. It's an incentive for streamlining our requirements, for doing more than what is expected of us. So pushing further yung ating streamlining, digitization, re-engineering. That's what we are trying to promote in under process result. Thank you.
Thank you po, sir, for answering that question. Yung ARTA po ba, are you going to add other insights po, ma'am, Director Grace? Or
Yes, good afternoon, Yusek Kim and Ma'am SDP Mendoza. Nothing much naman from what Yusek Kim mentioned, but it is always good to include na rin. It's about time to include the internal services talaga. Kasi for the past PBB cycles, nakafocus lagi sa external eh. So I'm sure a lot of the agencies, medyo napa-perfect na yung side na yun. But tignan natin yung side naman of the people inside the organization, the processes inside the organization na dapat binibigyan din natin ng pansin. No? So yun, yung mga na-report dati, we've had the discussion na mas maganda if we can, tamang sinabi ni Josephine kanina, other services na I'm sure meron pa nga rin pong hindi natin talaga na do-document o nabibigyan ng pansin na dapat ma-improve naman. So doon naman tayo siguro bumaling ng tingin. At yun yung isama natin sa report na to.
thank you, ma'am. Okay, let's move to the next question. From MMDA. Okay, what if the client cannot be reached? Or we have experienced complaints from anonymous and without any contact. How can we get the feedback mechanism in this case? Medyo hindi lang clear kung they're pertaining to hotline 8888 ba or CCB. But anyone po from OP and the CSC can answer this question po. Meron po ba sasagot ng question na ito?
Good afternoon. I'm Fia Salimbides from
Yes,
the
ma'am.
Civil
Good
Service
afternoon po.
Commission. Yes po. With regards to the contact center ng bayan, what we do is that we also check kung complete ba yung information or yung details provided by the customer. However, if the customer would request na anonymous yung complaint niya, or we will not be providing contact details or information or his identity or identity to the agency where we refer the complaint, we observe that protocol. So we only advise the agency na we advise the agency to reply to us directly, not to the customer. So kami na rin yung re-relay, magbibigay ng feedback dun sa customer. So that's what we do with anonymous complaints. Kasi definitely, even if walang identification yung client, merong way how we could contact them kasi merong email yon, merong contact numbers na ginamit to lodge their complaints with the contact center ng bayan. So that's what we do in CCB. Thank you.
So that's from the CCB's part, no, sa contact center ng bayan. Do we have representative from OP 8888? Okay, so siguro if ever we'll just forward the same concern to hotline 8888 and then we'll just go back, we'll just get back to MMDA or if may similar questions from other agencies. So let's proceed to our next question po. Again, this is for hotline 8888 and CCB. Can you expound on the complaints resolved as some complaints could not be resolved within 72 hours. Sige po. From OPNCSC again, ma'am. Meron daw pong mga complaints na hindi kayang ma-resolve ng agencies within 72 hours. And for 2022, isinama na po natin yung resolution, compliance nila to the resolution rate na 72 hours.
Yeah. I believe yung 72 hours refer to the EO of the president na within 72 hours complaint should be resolved. No, so sa amin naman sa contact center ng bayan, although we also observe that 72 hours, pero doon sa monitoring namin din ng resolution ng agencies, tinitingnan din namin kung kasi we also refer to the RA 11032. Merong 3 working days for simple transactions, complex transactions 7 days. So tinitingnan din namin yung nature. So ang ire-report namin sa AO25 from the CCB is i-analyze din namin yung nature ng complaint. Kung talaga bang simple lang siya, then it should fall under 72 hours. Pero ika-classify namin dun sa report that we will be submitting kung ito ba would really require 72 or more than 72 hours na reporting. But since yung sa 2020, this is the first time that we'll be doing this, no, yung sa compliance rate. Kasi last year ang report lang namin that we submitted to AO25 is the yung resolution rate. So percentage lang, no problem. So this is a first time for us na gagawin. So we will provide detailed information kung na-resolve ba siya sa part ng CCB, kung na-resolve ba siya in 3 days, 7 days, and then kung beyond 3 days, we will check bakit. So hindi naman po outright na, meron din kaming provide na explanation kung bakit gano'n natagalan. Or we would also request the agencies then na kung na-resolve beyond 3 working days, meron ding explanation or merong on the concrete action that they have taken kasi they will be submitting reports, diba, to the AO25 task force as to the concrete action taken on complaints. So they could also include why the actions took them more than 72 hours to complete yung resolution of the complaint. So yun po. Thank you.
Po, Ms. Fia. Okay, next question, please. From NLRC, may we inquire on the reckoning date on the CCSS compliance with the 72-hour period? May we request that it be prospective in application effective May? May reckoning period raw po ba yung sa 72-hour compliance ng agencies? Just forward this question to the CSC and OP. And then we'll just get back to NLRC. Okay, from BIFAR, Region 4A, the MC requires the creation of a performance management team. Our agency will also create a team headed by a PBB focal person that will ensure compliance to the requirements of MC 2022-1. Is the PMT a different team to the one we will create?
Nadine,
yes, sir.
The latest circular, as in our previous issuances, does not require agencies to create a new performance management team. We are referring to the existing performance management team as is also required by the Civil Service Commission that also evaluates the accomplishment of targets of the respective agencies, that assess the respective SPMS of the agency. So it's practically the same. We're referring to the same PMT.
Yusek De Leon for clarifying that. Okay, let's move on to the next questions rather. From COA, Commission on Audit. Is the ISO certification or equivalent still an eligibility requirement for 2022? And are we required to submit CSAT on the two identified critical services, yung one external and one internal from under process results? Okay, so anyone again po from our TWG can answer the questions from COA.
I'll answer letter A, pero I'll leave
Sir.
letter B to the other members. As in 2021, the ISO certification is no longer an eligibility requirement, but it can be a proof of process standardization, which can be considered under the process result. So it's no longer a lone requirement that you should have an ISO certification. But if you have one, you can submit it as one of the several proof of process result in process improvement or process reengineering, standardization, or digitization.
Yusek De Leon. Okay. SVP Mendoza raised her hand po. Thank you, ma'am.
So I will try to answer yung letter B. With respect to the submission of the citizen or client satisfaction results, yun yung CSAT na I understand na question ng COA. I think for the submission of the citizen or client satisfaction results, kailangan yung coverage ay yung lahat ng services as in the past. Only for the process results tayo nag-limit ng submission to two critical services of the agency for the 2022 cycle. So yung CSAT natin will cover the different services pa din ng agency.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay. So for our next question from NWRB. So who will rate this is for agency accountability requirements. Who will rate the agencies? What is the rating of the CCB letter stating, di pala under CCSS pala to, not agency accountabilities. CCB letter stating that no negative feedback was received by them relative to the delivery of services of the office. So maybe si Ms. Fia po can help us answer this question. Yes, ma'am.
Oo nga, first time yan. We would refer that to the Task Force AO25. Kasi hindi rin naman kasalanan ng agency kung wala siyang natanggap na complaint, diba? So for further for decision ang AO25. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. So for NWRB and for agencies with the similar question po, we will just inform you on the answer regarding this question. Okay, thank you. Next question po ay from Picard. Do we consider the complaint resolved if the complainant did not get back to us to furnish more details on the complaint? So ito yata yung pag-submit and yung turnaround ng questions nila. Ma'am from CSC po,
Yes.
ano po yung kanilang answer?
Sa experience namin sa contact center ng bayan, that's what we do. Kung nakita natin yung effort naman ng agency to go back to to reach out to the customer and wala talaga, hindi nag-reply. So they just have to advise us na wala talaga, walang so we will also close that. Yung na yun. Even sa level po ng contact center ng bayan, kapag hindi na complete yung requirements, yung mga details na natatanggap namin, we do an outbound call or text or email dun sa customers. But kung wala na rin kaming matanggap from them, hindi na namin siya nire-refer dun sa agency, kinu-close na rin namin outright sa level po ng contact center ng bayan. So yun po. Thank you.
Ma'am. Okay. So next question po natin Medyo marami-rami pa ba? To achieve, from the SWD, to achieve a score of 5 based on the matrix, the basis is to have a high satisfaction rate with 100% complaints resolved and compliance rate to 8888 and contact center ng bayan. However, the recent 8888 Citizens Complaint Hotline that the field offices are receiving is not for the grievance anymore, but clients request grants and different provisions of assistance. Thus, the FOs are requesting to put exemptions if the 8888 CCB tickets that the offices are receiving are not complaints but instead a request for assistance. May we seek your guidance to this matter?
Okay, for CCB po, we strictly monitor complaints lang po. For PBB purpose po, ang minomonitor po namin and ang nire-report namin is yung complaints received by the contact center ng bayan. But for the request for assistance, queries, and suggestions, hindi na po namin siya sinasama dun sa report that we submit to AO25. Yun po. Sa 888, hindi po namin alam yung process nila.
So we'll just forward this to the 8888 office then. And we'll get back to the SWD. Okay. Next question po. Okay, from NWRB, regarding 888 submission of proof of compliance and resolution, what document are we going to submit? So same po to, we'll just forward this to the 8888 office. So next question. So are ARTA complaints included in the citizen or in the client satisfaction survey results? So ang andun po sa ating guidelines ay yung 8888 and CCB complaints. So are ARTA complaints included ba in the client satisfaction results? Anyone po can answer or we'll just we'll stick to the guidelines po na 8888 and CCB complaints yung tinitingnan natin dun sa citizen client satisfaction results natin.
Yes,
Yes, Nadine,
Miss
for now.
Nadine. Yes, yes, sir.
Sino po yung nagsalita? Si Yusek Kim and si Ma'am
Director Grace. We're just
Director Grace.
confirming that at least for now we're looking at CSC and 8888 complaints. We'll discuss further with the TWG how we will be dealing later with the complaints lodged before the ARTA.
Po, sir. Thank you po. Okay, so next question po natin ay, may we ask if we can still comply the certificate of no early procurement activities of 2020 and 2021, just in case we have not submitted it to the GPPB. So this is a specific question po from PRC. So we'll just, kung sino po yung focal person ng PRC, you can send your question po or yung concern nila to the AO25 Secretariat at dap.edu.ph, yung aming email address. So next question po. From COA. If a permanent employee of an agency or agency A is detailed in agency B or another agency for 1 year, is the employee eligible for the PBB? If so, who will pay for his PBB? Is it agency A or agency B? Kung sasagot ng ating question na ito.
Nandiyan si Director Gerald.
Director Gerald, good afternoon po ulit.
Definitely the employee will be rated doon sa recipient agency niya kung saan siya nakadetail. And base sa guidelines natin, ang payment pa rin is sa mother agency. Kung tama po ano. So, agency A, employee concern will be rated in agency B, but agency A will pay the corresponding PBB of the employee concern. But if this is if COA will have an issue on the matter, it will may we request COA to send a formal request or formal query to the DBM so that we have a documented response on the matter. But based on our guidelines, yung nabanggit ko kanina, employee will be rated at agency B but will be paid by agency A.
Thank you po, Director Gerald. So, our next question po. So, we'll reach the end of our program na. So, maybe I'll just read a couple of questions pa before. Pero, before we end po later, again, uulitin namin, pwede po kayong mag-send ng inyong questions sa AO25. And for sure, may sasagot naman po sa inyong questions. And you can just contact us through our email address and phone numbers po. So our next question is from Aisatu. Ito, no? Okay, good day. Just want to clarify po. In our case, we have the main campus and 4 satellite or external campuses. Will all the campuses have the same rating or do we need to rank them? And yung another question niya is, another one, just want to ask if when will we receive the copy of the memorandum for the new requirements of the ARTA and NCP, the guidelines of their new requirements? If meron daw pong separate guidelines yung requirements ng CART and dun sa NCP. Okay, thank you po.
Yes, Ms. Nadine. ARTA will be releasing the guidelines on the CART po. We're just doing the final details on this one. But as soon as we're done with it and we got the clearances already, we'll release it already.
So yung SUCs po are not included pa dun sa NCP requirement, but just to clarify po from the Philippine Competition Commission po, if may guidelines po ba dun sa requirements natin for the National Competition Policy?
Yes, Nadine, we will provide additional clarification, maybe in a form of a memo, so that we can also inform the participating agencies with regards to where they can attend the seminar on CIA also. Not just DAP, but maybe we can refer them to our system on CIA module. Thank you.
Po, edita natin. Yes, Director Grace, again, you raised your hand po, ma'am.
Yes, Ms. Nadine. Yun lang, yung MC naman is posted in our website. They can refer to that, but a few more details will be added to that later on. But yung basic creation of the cart is already there. Composition of the cart is there. So pwede po na nilang magamit yun to start off. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And then, SVP Mendoza, ma'am.
Yeah, yung sa letter A na yung rating, I think very clear yung guideline natin na yung rates or yung factor depending sa salaries, di ba? It would be the same and therefore there will be no ranking of the delivery units and the individuals. But then, ang firstly, dapat maging eligible muna. Kasi kung yung campus or kung sino mang delivery unit ay rated or sila yung cost ng rating below 4 ng agency, hindi sila kasama doon sa sa eligible. So, yun lang ang gusto kong i-clarify din dito. So, no more ranking of the delivery units, the eligible delivery units, and the eligible individuals will no longer be ranked.
Okay. So, next question po. Meron pa ba? Meron pa tayong questions. So, we got a lot of questions pala from YouTube and Facebook. Since daw po, new requirements yung CART, yung designation of CART and the NCP. Will there be a consideration regarding the non-compliance to these requirements? Newly added requirements for 2022. Lalo nung nagtanong nito, okay, meron pong sasagot.
Sasagutin ko si Anonymous.
Sige, sir.
Number one, it is not a new requirement per se. The establishment of the card, for instance, is something that is required under the ease of doing business law. And that's why we have placed it under agency accountability, because under the law, all agencies are supposed to establish the card. And I think very simple naman yung requirement natin insofar as the card is concerned, that agencies should be able to constitute the respective Committee on Anti-Red Tape, if I am not mistaken. Yun lang naman po yung kahingian natin. And we have until December 2022 to do that. And that's why we take this opportunity and we highly encourage all our national government agencies, those who are covered by the circular, to make the necessary interventions and mechanisms to establish the respective Committee on Anti-Red Tape as mandated by the issue of doing business law. As for the NCP, meron namang matrix ito, di ba? May mga matrix naman ito on the covered industries. And we have discussed this in the technical working group as well, ano yung magiging scope ng requirement natin on agency accountability. And again, we have until December 31, 2022 to do, I think, just three steps. Ano? Number one is to designate a focal person for the NCP. Number two is, I believe, for the focal person to attend trainings. And the third is for the agency to determine whether or not they are covered supposedly by the NCP. And we have established templates already. We have provided some toolkits for ready reference of the agency. So kung kayo po ay covered, then meron tayong template. I think that's a simple checklist that you can easily accomplish. And kung hindi naman kayo sa tingin nyo covered after your assessment, we already also provided you with the format of the attestation to be accomplished by the head of the agency stating that you're not covered by the NCP, which is, by the way, covered by an executive order issued by the president. That's the two reasons why we place them under agency accountability. And it's also why we endeavored to release the guidelines early in March so that we have 9 more months to comply, to give more time for the agencies to accomplish these 2 additional agency accountabilities required of us under existing laws and executive order issued by the president.
Much po, Yusek Kim, for those insights. So, just one last question na lang po ang i-entertain natin for this afternoon. Maraming salamat po sa lahat po ng mga nag-send ng kanilang questions and clarifications. So, last question. Ito na ba? This one. From PEZA, how can an agency comply with the early procurement activities requirement if it is not covered by the conduct of EPA and National Expenditure Program? Okay, so this is for mga GOCCs ata ang question nila. So anyone po from our TWG can answer this question. So, do we have representatives po from the GPPB?
Hello, good afternoon po.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon.
Gerard po from GBBB TSO. Yung sa ano po, for compliance po nung mga hindi naman covered, meron pong ibang certification po na pwede silang i-issue, ma'am. Kasi may iba-iba pong certificate of compliance na pinifill up, depende po sa anong applicable po sa agency po.
Thank you. We hope that that clarified po yung question ng PEZA and other agencies similar case. So thank you very much po for all our participants, audience that have sent their questions. And most especially to our TWG members and representatives from the validating agencies. Thank you very much po for your insights and for helping us answer all the questions po. So in the coming days, the AO25 will release a list of frequently asked questions po, FAQs, and the corresponding answers for everyone's convenience. Again po, katulad po ng sinasabi namin kanina, if meron po kayong katanungan or clarification specific to your agencies or meron kayong mga concerns, you can send them to our email, ao25secretariat@dap.edu.ph. Maraming salamat po. I just have one request to our TWG members and validating agencies. Can you please turn on your cameras po so that aside from the gallery view, para makita po tayo lahat ng ating audience from Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. And maybe we can just wave lang po, say hi to them para maramdaman nilang live na live po tayo ngayong hapon na ito. Okay, yan. Yan, ang ganda. Okay, can we have a group photo? Yan. Okay, say hi po. Ay, mag-wave. Say hi tuloy. Ako lang pala yung mag-wave po tayo. Magandang hapon po. Maraming salamat po sa lahat ng nakilahok sa ating programa ngayon. Okay. Sige. So, I'll turn over the microphone to Selena. Selena.
Thank you, Ms. Nadine, and the members of TWG and validating agencies. To everyone in attendance, you may continue to reach us through our contact details flashed on the screen. You may also send us emails, and we assure you that we will answer queries as soon as possible. For immediate concerns, you may likewise contact us through our phone numbers, which can also be found on the screen.
We've now reached the end of our orientation this afternoon. On behalf of the AO25 IATF, TWG, the Secretariat, and our oversight agencies, we would like to thank everyone for actively participating in today's online orientation. Manatili po tayong ligtas at malusog at magandang hapon po at maraming salamat po.
you.